Yeah, welcome here to Seismic Radio. Just a little microphone check there. We are doing the Book of Proverbs here at Seismic Radio. The software I'm using, just to let you know, and it's free to download, it's called eSword. So it's E dash and then SWORD. So if you Google it, it'll get you to the right website. There are loads of Bible versions and free versions and also to pay for versions in different languages as well, which you can download and which you can utilize for your own perusal, including a lot of books and study tools, commentaries, and lots of other stuff as well. So I really recommend it. And the beauty is you can download the whole thing, so it's not online. So if the internet goes down or you haven't got internet access for whatever reason, you've still got access to an online Bible plus a whole range of fantastic tools. So it's worthwhile to go for it. So it's called eSword. I'm just going to spell it for you. It's E and then dash, the minus sign, and then SWORD, like the weapon, sword. eSword, and I should know which the website is. I didn't check it out, but I'll leave it to you to use your search engine, the search engine of your choice. There are more than one, and to go for it, to try and find it. Okay, the version I'm using is the MKJV, but I'm also using, which I've found helpful. I'm just looking at this computer here. I don't think I've installed it on this computer, so I won't be using it today. This is the easy-to-read version. It's very much interpretation in the easy-to-read version. I find that the King James Version is very close to the original text, and that the authors of the King James Version, the team who in 1611 put it all together, that they did a very good job. And then, follow-up versions, looked at the changes within the English language and made it more palatable to the modern ear with words we actually understand, and leaving out words which have fallen out of use over the centuries. Okay, let's have a look at this text here. So it's Proverbs chapter 10. Proverbs, a fantastic book. I'm going through it chapter by chapter, and if you watch on the YouTube channel, you can see the text. If you listen to the podcast, obviously you can only hear. But I'm doing it chapter by chapter. We are now doing chapter 10, and I think I probably have to do it in about 2 sessions to go through this chapter. But I would encourage you to stick with me. Chapter 10, the heading says the Proverbs of Solomon, and that's also the first part of the first verse. So we know who has written this. I've mentioned before that a lot of the book of Proverbs is written by Solomon. The previous chapters, I'm sure that some of the Proverbs were, I'm thinking. I've got no evidence or anything like that. But that they came from Solomon. And later on we find other contributors to the book of Proverbs as well in later chapters. But here it's spelled out. This is Solomon. This is Solomon speaking. So who is Solomon? Solomon, he's the son of King David. King David, a man unto the heart of God, according to the heart of God. Solomon, the wisest man, or the wisest king. I could say maybe the wisest man on earth except Jesus Christ. Maybe I could say that. Anyway, Solomon, when he became king, he was seeking God, and he did lots of sacrifices, and he was seeking the face of God, and God offered him a wish, and he's a king, and kings in those days, they were very much involved in battle. They were very much involved in building their own wealth. They were involved about power, control, and things like that. So that was in his age. But what Solomon was asking for was not the death of his enemies, victory in battle, wealth, and honor. He wasn't asking for any of these things, but he was asking for wisdom to rule these people. And you can read this in the Old Testament when it talks about Solomon and the succession from David to Solomon. And God said, because you haven't asked for the death of your enemies or for wealth or for honor, but you've asked for wisdom, I'll give you all the others as well. So his rulership was very great. It was very powerful. Under his government, Israel was prospering and was doing very well. And let me tell you, I wish that more of our politicians today would have a similar spirit to Solomon, that they would ask God for wisdom to rule a people, that they would ask God for guidance, for cleverness, and not just for ideology or power and so on. When I look at the political landscape today, what I see is not very good. I see nepotism. I see incapable people at the top running countries. I see fear. I see a desire and a hunger and a thirst for power. I see megalomaniacs. If I look around and would I look for a wise politician, a politician that is maybe ruling on the lines of Solomon? And I'm sure there may be some out there in the world. We've got about 230 nations in this world, and I'm sure some of them have been blessed by wisdom and are ruling their nation in the fear of God with wisdom, but I can't think of any. And if you know of any, let me know. Put it in the comments here under the talk on YouTube if you're watching it on YouTube. But I would love to hear of a good, wise politician. When I look back in history, and I look, I'm not a political analyst or anything like that, but I look at American politics, I look at British politics, I look at German politics as well. I can identify a few politicians here and there who had a phase in their life where I got the impression they were ruling by wisdom, and they were doing a very good job, and they deserve honor for what they have done. Interestingly, very often these times were also times where the majority of the nation, of the people, were God-fearing, would have some respect before God, even if they weren't, lovers of the Lord or Bible readers or whatever, but they had some respect for God. When I look at the current generations in the West, I think for a lot of people this respect for God has gone out of the window, and people have, I wouldn't say given up on God, but they've turned their back towards God. They've turned away from God. And I think very often the way a country is governed and ruled, not always, but very often, is a reflection of the way the people are. Can we do anything? And I haven't even gone into the text, and I'm going, yes, the answer is we can do something. One thing which we should do is, and I'm certainly not doing enough of it, we can remember our nation, the nation where we are living in. I mean, I'm sort of involved with a couple of nations. I live in one nation, I belong to another nation. But we can pray for those nations where we are linked up to or linked up with. In my case, the nation I was born in, the nation I'm living in, and then some of the nations I'm dealing with on a regular basis. Where I've got a lot of friends who are living there. And that might be something you can do as well. Just pray for the politicians, even if your politicians are not in the political sector where you are, and they make decisions which go, in your and in my opinion, against the word of God and against God. Still pray for those politicians. Pray that God will put a block for them to ruin the nation, that He will disable them for ruining the nation, that they will rule and come to a point of ruling with the best interest into the nation. Very often politics is not just one person, but it's all movements and groups. It's sometimes a spiritual thing as well, where nations are under spiritual attack to sink deep into the mire, or to flourish where they are under a spiritual blessing. And that is very important. So, my friends, pray for your nation, pray for your leaders, pray for God's intervention in your nation, that the worst may be averted. I believe that we are the salt of the earth as Christians, and we can make a difference. We can make a big difference. Bible doesn't say for nothing, pray for those who persecute you. ultimately, with the aim that they will become one of us, that the persecutor will become a brother or sister to us rather than an enemy. Okay, let's go through the text. We are in Proverbs chapter 10, verse 1. It's of Solomon, a wise king, so it's worthwhile to listen to him. And here we know for sure this is all the sayings of Solomon. Okay, he starts off and he says in verse 1, a wise son makes a glad father, but a foolish son is a sorrow of his mother. And again, when I look at this, there's a lot of wisdom in just this one line, in this one statement. When I look at this statement, I see a son, and I see a father and a mother. And obviously we can have a foolish son, and then it's pretty much the opposite, and we can have a wise son, a good son. Right, why does he make a father glad? If a son is wise, makes good decisions, and this is what, as fathers, we want to do. We want our children not to be totally dependent on us, but we want them to, especially our sons, we want them to gain independence and, go through life making their own decisions, but making good decisions in life. And if a father has got a son who makes good decisions, he'll be glad. What happens if he makes bad decisions or foolish? Will it be his sorrow? It's interesting as well. We're going to look at the mother in a moment. I don't think it'll be a sorrow, because what men tend to do is they tend to detach, and I'm generalizing, and it's not a good idea to generalize, but just in general, men tend to detach from things where things go wrong, from relatives which go wrong, from sons, brothers, parents, or whatever who do wrong. You just detach yourself and you say, you do your thing, I do my thing, and that's it, and then everything is sorted, and you just carry on with your life. And let's look at the second half of the verse. And it says, but a foolish son is the sorrow of his mother. It's not the sorrow of his father, it's the sorrow of his mother. And this is where women are slightly different. And it's maybe something to bear in mind. And I'm just interpreting this from my own experience. Doesn't mean that it's right, that it's correct, but just take it on board and then reject it or accept it. It's up to you, obviously. But a mother has got a deeper connection with her children. And a mother will suffer if the children go wrong, if they make bad decisions, if they make big errors in their lives. Women, or mothers in particular, really, really suffer, and it's deep sorrow to them. Whereas fathers just tend to shake it off, and just get on with life. Mothers just go through life suffering. Okay. Everybody who is listening has got a father and a mother. And many of you have got a father and a mother who are still alive. And it's something to bear in mind that your decisions don't just affect yourself, your life, even though they're your prerogative. You can make decisions and you can choose good and you can choose bad. But something you have to bear in mind, you'll always affect other people. And if you are just growing up and you do wrong decisions, you'll make your mother suffer, and you'll detach from your father. If you do well, you will not make your mother suffer. She won't be in sorrow, but you'll have a glad father. And it's something to bear in mind that we are not living on an island, but we are living in, whether we want to or not, inevitably in community, and our decisions affect others. And it's sometimes very, very difficult. It's so easy to be selfish and to make decisions which are not good, and to cause other people to suffer on account of the decisions we make. It's just something to bear in mind. So embrace wisdom, try to live in the fear of God, and things will be okay, things will be well. Okay, next one is, treasures of wickedness profit nothing, but righteousness delivers from death. Okay. Right, treasures of wickedness, what are they? Treasures of wickedness are treasures which you gain through dishonesty, corruption, through doing the wrong thing, through taking money from other people you're not entitled to. Obviously, if you trade, you sell, you're entitled to, if you sell something, to take money. But if you just take money away from them, you're not entitled to that. And so there are treasures of wickedness. And what it says here, they profit nothing. And this is something you have to bear in mind. I mean, I sometimes look today, and let me just sort of take out a bit. I look at some of the Russian oligarchs and some of the stuff that's going on in Russia. And you think there's just like a lot of very rich and very powerful people, and they it's like a clique which is there, and they take the riches of the country and they divide it up amongst themselves, and they've got like nice yachts, and I've heard some of these guys have got about 10 yachts. They're now engaging in a war. Some people say that the real reason for this war is that there was a lot of gas found in the Ukraine. And I don't know whether this is right, this is true. No idea, I'm just repeating what I hear. It sounds plausible, and I heard of it from several sources. There was a lot of gas in the Ukraine and the Donetsk region, so that's the eastern part. And Ukraine has got all the infrastructure to supply Europe, so they in theory could just take the gas out, extract it, stick it in a pipeline, send it to Europe, and they would cut out Russia. And so Russia just, they got all the pretenses with NATO and all the rest of it, and so they just decided, right, let's resolve this problem and go in, take the country over, and then we're under total control. And all it seems to be is just like a small clique at the top who are insanely rich, and are living it up. And very little money, from the resources which are taken out of Russia go back to the ordinary people. Instead, they monopolize the media. They tell everybody that they need to be patriotic and all the rest of it. And all they are is, in essence, the same as under the Tsarist regime. It's just like serfs who feed the masters and who are grateful to do so. Because all they want is just a strong master, a strong hand who is taking all the wicked people from the West and fascists and so on, taking them away from them. And that seems to be what is going on there. But when I look at these oligarchs and I look at what is going on there, that a lot of it, they are treasures of wickedness. They're just people who are enriching themselves on the back of a nation, who are exploiting the resources, the God-given resources to a nation, in this instance gas and oil, and are abusing them, for their own frivolity. Big yachts, lots of land elsewhere. It's interesting as well when you look at some of these oligarchs, they go to Siberia and they get people to die at the front in the Ukraine. And then their children are somewhere in England or in America or somewhere else. They're outside of Russia. Far away from the draft or from any potential engagement with what's going on there. And it's just one example, and it's just one of many examples of treasures of wickedness. And they profit nothing. Now, these people, I'm convinced they're more afraid than anything else. There were a few months ago, and you don't hear this anymore in the news, there were oligarchs who were, falling out of windows, allegedly committing suicide. In reality, probably just murdered, by throwing out of a high-rise hotel building. And, to get rid of a problem, get rid of some inconvenience, possibly hijack or take the money they've... they're treasures of wickedness, take them over through wickedness. And it seems to be the case. It seems, once you get into those positions, you're by no means safe. You by no means have you got a resource that will save you in times of trouble. But what you have is just a threat that is there all the time. Again, a lot of oligarchs get imprisoned over there. A lot of them get murdered. Prigozhin, apparently, he had like gold bars in his flat, and money was coming out of his ears. He was probably one of the richest men in Europe. He came into some inner conflict with what was going on with the military, and a few days later he was dead. His plane mysteriously fell out of the sky, and he died. Treasures of wickedness profit nothing. Now, if you embark on this route, eventually those treasures are going to kill you. And these treasures are going to be your downfall. Other than that, again, I remember a friend of mine, dead now, sorry, just I'm playing with a little battery which just fell over. A friend of mine, they were both dead, and they were very hardworking people, and they generated quite a bit of wealth for themselves. And both came from a couple, elderly couple with a couple of kids, and both came from meager circumstances. And they, towards the end of their life, they reached a nice amount of wealth, an enjoyable amount. But they had a couple of houses as well, and I thought, oh, it must be nice because you could just rent them out and, get some money from the real estate and stuff like that. And I thought it must be nice to have this. And they said, and I still remember this till today, and the lady said that it's not really nice to own houses. Sometimes it feels like you are owned by those houses, by the real estate. The real estate is owning you rather than the other way around. And this is sometimes a problem, that people get owned by their riches, by their treasures. We're going to see this in later as well in one of the Proverbs, where it says that people who love money never have enough, and this is a problem. There's going to be a controlling factor. It's a bit like sin, that sin starts controlling you when you engage in sin. Again, Jesus says that whoever does sin is mastered by sin, and it's a bit like that as well. If you fall for the love of money, eventually the love of money and the accumulation of goods and so on is controlling your life, and it's almost like an addiction. You need to have more and more and more, and it gets really, really bad, and it's going to kill you in one way or another. So it's just something to bear in mind. The treasures of wickedness profit nothing. They don't get you anywhere. In the end, you can only sleep in one bed. You can only have one shelter. You can only, at any one time, you can only have, you can only drink water, eat normal food. You can only wear one set of clothing at any one time. And if you've got one to wear and one to wash, you've got what you need, really. I hope you have a bit more. You've got like more than two sets of clothing, the one you wear and the one that needs to be washed. But the point I'm trying to make is treasures here on earth don't bring you happiness, ultimately. There was a study as well, and because it's quite an important subject, a lot of people just get drawn in by materialism, even within a Christian context. That is said, come to Christ and everything will be well, and you will be rich, and God's going to bless you, and you can give to the missions whilst you're living it up, and so on. So this was a few years ago a message which was sort of pumped out all the time, the prosperity gospel. My friend, it doesn't exist. The promise we've got in the Bible is that God will meet all of your needs, providing you seek first the kingdom of God. God will provide what you need to wear and what you need to eat. The needs will be met. But you need to walk with God. You need to listen to Him. You need to obey the voice of God in your life, and put first the kingdom of God in your life, and then all these needs will be met. And you will get answers in your life. You will get your provisions made ready for you to take, supernaturally sometimes. Right. Before I move on, I just want to make one point, and that is the whole thing about Russia. And it really struck me. I was looking at this, and they've got like railways which go from Europe all the way to Vladivostok, far away in the east. And they've got like, I think, 2 train lines and several train lines which crisscross the country. But when you look at the road connection, there's not a single road, from what I understand, from what I've seen, that goes reliably from all year round, summer and winter, from European Russia all the way to Vladivostok. There's nothing there. It's all trains or planes, but no existing roads which are stable and strong enough to connect the country. Some roads in some areas are de facto non-existent. There's nothing there. And this is something which I don't get my head around it. There are these rich people who take a huge amount of money away from Russia. There's this massive amount of corruption that is going on. Nobody seems to fight the corruption. Instead, they decide to fight the Ukrainians. And nobody seems to wanting to invest in the infrastructure of the nation, to have functional roads which can be used all year round, all the way from east to west and then to all the different regions. It's just nothing there. Just nothing there. And it's really shocking. There are train lines. Train lines are good, and pretty much the whole economy, because it's no other way, depends on the connections, the train connections between different parts of the country. But there's very little in the shape of roads, of just box standard and necessary infrastructure. So again, treasures of wickedness. That's what we are talking about. And there's treasures of wickedness all over. This world is filled with wicked people. The prince of this world, the devil, is wicked. He's a liar. He's come to steal, kill, and destroy. And that's what he is doing. And he's leading people in a bad way. And they end up killing one another, destroying one another, and stealing from one another. And we need to get away from this. And again, the key is the gospel message. And I wish to maybe, if you are Russian, and pray into the situation that in the government of Russia there will be people, coming to the knowledge of the Almighty God, that they will stand up and repent from all their corruption, that they will suddenly decide, why am I having these billions of rubles in my bank account or Swiss bank account or wherever, and I can't even consume whatever I have. Why don't I give back to the people, the people who have made me rich? Why don't I give back to those, the country where I've taken resources from? Why don't I, that people come around, that they get around. And again, the answer is just the gospel. It's really that God will awaken them and lead them onto a better path. And then we're going to go to the next part of this verse. Again, it's a lot of it is sort of Hebrew poetry, which is there. And it might be worthwhile to go in Hebrew, see what it sounds like in the original language. But it's this poetry where you put contrast to one another. So treasures of wickedness profit nothing. And then it says here, but righteousness delivers from death. Yeah. And there are several facets to this verse. I'm going to move on to this verse. Number one is, if you are righteous and you pursue righteousness, things will go better. People will trust you. People will treasure you. And some people will persecute you and they will seek your death. But most people will appreciate that you are a man of righteousness and that you are a man who doesn't take from them, but who is rather likely to give. Righteousness delivers from death. Yeah. So there's a spiritual aspect as well, and our righteousness, and it's important as well. So if you listen to this and you're not a Christian, which is okay, which is okay, but if you're not a Christian, then you need a righteousness which is supernatural. And to be fair, the Bible talks about you and me and says that we are all sinners and we all fall short of the glory of God. And this is what you can read in Romans. But Jesus Christ, the righteous one, God became flesh. He took your and my punishment upon himself, and as he was nailed to the cross and he shed his blood, he atoned for your sin and for my sin, so that as far as God is concerned, we can be righteous in the sight of God. Okay, so with that, we can connect with God. And once we connect with God, he will pour out his Holy Spirit into our lives. And once he pours his Holy Spirit into our lives, the Holy Spirit will convict us of sin. He will lead us into righteousness. And he will lead us into a better way of life. He will lead us into something which Christians call sanctification, which means, if you are a Christian and you are sort of, traveling down life's lane, and a few years down the line, you will be less likely to sin than early on, because of the discipline of the Holy Spirit in your life, because of the power, the transforming power of God in your life. If that is not the case, please make sure you're right with God. Please make sure that Jesus is your Lord, that your salvation is real, and it's not just a ritual or something like that. So righteousness delivers from death. So that's something you always need to bear in mind. Jesus said that whosoever believes in him will not see death, but he is crossed over from death to life. He has crossed over from death to life. So bear this in mind. Yeah, bear this in mind. Righteousness is important, and there's in every aspect. Okay, let's move on to the next sentence. So the next verse is verse 3. The Lord will not allow the soul of the righteous to go hungry, but he casts away the desire of the wicked. Okay. The soul of the righteous. Now, as I said before, in Matthew we have got the promise of our needs being met. Yeah. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. And which are all these things? And they are, what will we wear? What will we dress? How will we get on tomorrow? What will we eat tomorrow? Yeah. So they are the needs in your everyday life. They will be met. That is the promise God has given you. Yeah. But also, the soul of the righteous will not go hungry. There's going to be a deep satisfaction in your soul. So it's a dual verse, and it's a dual meaning which I see in this verse. One of them is real, practical, everyday bread and butter. And I've seen this in my life when I've been a Christian for 40 years now, and I've seen this. That people, they come out of very humble circumstances, and this is where the prosperity gospel, gets its beef from. And they come to Christ, and then suddenly things start changing. And sometimes it's just natural, because people don't spend all the money on drugs or on alcohol or on vanity, but they start sort of budgeting and spending whatever money they have on what is necessary. They live more frugal lives, and they invest into other things in their lives. And then very often, if they are, very poor people, as they come to Christ, and you see them 10 years later, they suddenly have got a career, they've got good jobs, better jobs, they've got better education, the kids are better educated, and so on. In my life, I can say the same thing. Before I became a Christian, I was a mediocre student. I wasn't very good at school. I became a Christian, and what I felt is that God was telling me, just do the minimum, just do what these people ask you to do. And I started doing it, and suddenly my grades went really well, and I got top grades, not top grades, but I moved from the bottom third of the class to the top third of the class. And I could go to an academic school after I finished my normal school. And then sort of life moved on, and I did, get a university education. And over the years, I've benefited from this. And I've done, I wouldn't say, super well, I'm not mega rich, but I've done okay. God has been looking after me, even though I've also had times where things were very difficult and where things were very hard, and where I literally didn't know what I was going to eat tomorrow. I had no food in the fridge, and I had no money to buy more food, but it came. Somehow it happened, and somehow I got by. So, again, I'm not righteous because of who I am. In the sight of God, I'm righteous because of what Christ has done. And that's a very, very important difference. I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to be righteous. I'm pursuing righteousness in my life. And it's sometimes very difficult, and very often I fall and I make mistakes. But I'm trying to pursue it. And we all should be doing the same thing. But I know that my righteousness before God is from Christ. It is not from me, not from within me. And so he will not let me go hungry. He will not let my soul go hungry. I will always be filled with the joy, the presence, and the peace of God in my life. Like Jesus said, that he will give us his peace, not as the world gives, but his peace is different. And I never understood this, but when I became a Christian, I understood this saying very well, because the peace of God is something that is deep down in your heart. It is something which makes you unshakable. Something which makes you stand in the storm. Where other people fall, you'll be able to stand because of Christ and because of the peace of God in your heart. When things go tipsy-turvy, you can still stand. When things go really, really tough and hard, you can still stand in the storm. And that is really the privilege we have got as children of the Most High, as children of God. And then he says, but he casts away the desire of the wicked. Yeah. And I have to say, when you look at the wicked, they're always looking for the next kick, the next big thing, next bit of power. And it depends on the degree of wickedness. Some people, they are ready to kill for their own advantage. Some people are ready to, just defraud other people or scam people or whatever. And what we have here is it's never going to be enough. And it's a bit like with those oligarchs. When you look at some, I'm going back and I've seen some documentaries on the life of the oligarchs in Russia. Rich people, mega rich people, insanely rich, to the point that they don't know what to do with the money anymore. Money is not important to them anymore because they've got so much of it. And so they're looking for the next big kick. And then very often it goes badly wrong. It goes badly wrong. So again, I mean, if you're an oligarch and you're listening to this, I'm not having a go at you, but I'm just telling you, you probably feel the emptiness in your life. And you feel that it's pretty tough to get through life, even though you've got everything, but it still doesn't make you happy. What you need to do is you need to, lift up your eyes to heaven and ask God to come in your life. Ask God to show you the truth, to show you the way, the truth, and the life. Open your heart towards Jesus Christ and invite him into your life. Then you will get peace, and then you will be able to enjoy the riches you have and to do the right thing with your riches. And to do right where things have gone wrong. Okay, he who deals with a lazy hand becomes poor, but the hand of the hard worker makes rich. Okay, just a common bit of wisdom. Be lazy, become poor. Work hard, it'll make you rich. Yeah. So again, be busy. Yeah. Be busy. So that's, I think, is a message here. There's a thing as well, we've got as Christians a commission, which is Mark 16, and Mark 16 is very very important. It's the Great Commission, telling us to preach the gospel until the end of times. And but there's also in Luke, I think it's Luke, there's a statement which says, occupy until he comes. So be busy until he comes. We shouldn't just, rest and relax, but be busy. And there are a couple of things which we should do is, we should be busy about our lives. We should be busy about, making a living. That's an honorable and a good thing. We should also be busy about the gospel and, fulfill Mark 16, to go into all the world and to preach the gospel to all creation, to all creatures. So, I mean, this is sort of the kind of stuff we should be doing, and we should occupying ourselves with, and it'll be good if we do this. Yeah. So, if we don't do it, a lazy hand we will become poor in so many aspects. If we do it, we'll become richer. Always bear in mind, we are not just here. We are not on an island. Yeah, we are amongst people. And when you look around in your own personal field, there are probably going to be a lot of people who are on their way to hell. And what we need to try to do is to show them a better way, to show them that Christ is there. And it's not necessarily, giving a little tract or they need to know that we are Christians and that we have got a hope. There's no question about it. But sometimes, the whole preaching thing and telling them what to do and what not to do doesn't go down too well. We need to be a living witness, a living testimony to those people around us, so that they will desire to pursue the same path we are walking in. And sometimes it's important to talk to them, and to just have the right word at the right time to reach out to them. So we need to be busy. We need to be busy about our lives, about our income, about where we are, what we are doing. We need to have times of rest, very important. But we also need to have times of busyness and become busy about the Lord's business. And, feeding ourselves and everything else as well. But the hand of the hard worker makes rich. So a hard worker makes rich. And again, when we're talking about riches, there's spiritual riches. We can accumulate treasures in heaven, which is better than here, because here they're not going to last that long. And eventually we're going to leave here anyway. And we've got deterioration of whatever you have. It's actually not so bad. I had to think about it. It says like rust and moth. And I thought, yeah, in the past I had a lot of cars and vehicles and things like that, and I always had like old cars, and rust was a big problem. I had my own welding machine, and it seemed to be, once a year you had your mechanical test, or 2 years in Germany. And one of the big jobs was just to patch it up and to weld some plates into the car. And you could see how the motor was just deteriorating on a constant basis. It doesn't seem to be that big a deal anymore. This time it seems to be the engines tend to pack up, and that's the end of another car, or some other bits go down. But we've got nothing here for eternity. And we should have sort of a mindset to think, what can we do to, hoard up treasures in eternity? And just pray about it. It could be, if you are a Christian, there is an eternity for you. There's a place in heaven for you, and there's going to be a place for you to live. And if you invest money, try and invest it into the heavenly bank. But don't just give it away willy-nilly, whatever you have, or give your time away nilly-willy. But pray about it. Pray about it how you can, increase or invest into your heavenly bank account. And that might be something to look into. So hard worker makes rich. He who gathers in summer is a wise son, but he who sleeps in harvest is a son who causes shame. Okay, gathering in summer, very, very important, because in winter there's no food to be able to get from nature around you. If you are a laborer, you need to lay up in an agricultural society, as it was in the times of Solomon and the times of Christ. If you're a laborer, you need to lay up for the winter months as well. You need to have a little bit of money stashed away so you can feed yourself and your family in wintertime as well, when there is not that much work to go around. If you are a farmer, you need to store up some of the grain, so you have to sell and you have to eat in wintertime. So it's very, very important. Sleeping in harvest time is a son who causes shame. This is the time as well. The harvest time, obviously agriculturally, I remember I used to work when I was a teenager, the guys who run the church, they had a farm, and so I was a little bit involved with the agricultural side of life. And I remember sort of when harvest time was on and we had like Bible studies and church services, you never saw them because they just had to work. And they were pretty much working 20 hours a day to get the harvest in. The big struggle they had as well is it was better for them to harvest the grain when it was dry. And the area where I lived was, the weather was very unsteady. So they were always looking on the weather map, is it going to rain? Is it not going to rain? And then when they had a dry season, they would, one of them told me they were, running the harvester so long that eventually he started hallucinating. And he saw, ghosts dancing over the field and things like that. And he knew it was time to sleep. It was just his brain playing tricks on him. And that was hard work, and it's a bit like that as well. So when you've got good times, you can make good money. If you transfer it to other realms in life, make the most of it and store it up. Don't just waste it. Don't just squander it, but store up the money for times when there's no harvest time, but when there's scarcity, like in winter. You can't just go out and pluck some fruit from a tree or whatever, or harvest some grain, but you would have to have something stored up in order to survive. So it's very, very important. And that's life. Life is cyclical. Even if you remove yourself from an agricultural cycle, you will always have times of excess and plenty and times of little and scarcity. And so we need to prepare as much as we can for these times. So it's just common sense, really. How would I translate this into modern days? Have plenty of food in your house. If the staple food, make sure you've got plenty of rice, pasta, maybe a bit of spare water as well in case there's ever a problem. Make sure you've got a bit of money in the bank. Don't trust the banks completely. Make sure you've got some cash somewhere. different bank accounts, different investments. But make sure you can take hold of some resources whenever you need to. Don't sort of go through life thinking everything will be fine. We're living in a stable society, and everything is going to be okay. Here's the answer: we are not living in a stable society. We are not, and it doesn't matter where you are. It can hit us at any time, and suddenly you won't be able to get your money from the cash machine, or banks fall over and you've lost everything. Your pension funds are gone. Whatever. It can be all sorts of stuff, and I've seen it again in my lifetime where all this has happened to people. The banks have fallen over and they've lost everything. Or a friend of mine in the Ukraine, the war broke out and the currency pretty much lost half of its value overnight. Half of its value. So everything you have, suddenly half of it has been taken away. And that's just due to some war activity. And this could happen to wherever you are as well. So make sure you common sense preparation, don't go crazy, but make sure you can keep yourself going for at least a few months if systems start breaking down. Or when they start breaking down. Again, don't go crazy about this, but just be reasonable. Just a common sense approach to this. What would you do, if the shops are inaccessible? I've had it here once where I live. There was we had lots of snowfall. The roads didn't get cleared. Then we had a power cut. And I thought to myself, because the roads wasn't cleared, wherever the power cut has occurred, whatever substation has gone down, there's nobody able to get to that substation because there was no road clearing, anything going on. It was just a nightmare. A lot of people got worried, so I went down to the shop, to the town center, and I think they still had electricity. And it was just a certain part here, which was part of the town, which was cut off. And I was kind of prepared, so I got all my stuff out, and gas was still flowing, so I could heat. So I was getting ready, with my rations and camping equipment to set myself up for this period until things would get back to normal. Now, I went down to town, and everybody went to town, and there was no milk and no bread, which you could buy, so the shops had sold out. There were some other bits still there, so I just had a look, and as I was going down, a friend came up and said, "There's no point going down. Everything is sold out," and people were panic buying at this point, and it was very, very difficult. But fortunately, the power cut didn't last very long. So by the time I got back home, I went back into the house, was ready to lock myself in and stick it out. And then about an hour later, the power came back on again. And so that problem was resolved. So I didn't have to have all my spare batteries and everything to keep going. The next, what I found was that the snow still carried on and nobody could get through. And it was about 3 days where nothing happened. So pretty much everything was closed. And then eventually the snow clearing trucks came through and the roads were freed up again and traffic was flowing again, and that was 3 days later. But it was just a lesson. So, and friends in Texas have been through the same a few years ago where everything was pretty much cut off and nothing was happening, no electricity. And it was a big problem for them as well. But the point I'm trying to make is just be prepared. It doesn't have to be like a mega war or something. It might just be a natural event, which or some outage of some form or another, which will stop you getting on with your life as you used to. And so it makes sense to think about what do you need, what can you do, and how can you mitigate any failure of any of the services or systems we are so used to these days. Okay, so that's about winter and summer. And I think I'm going to stop here, otherwise it's getting too long. I'm in verse 6 now. Blessings on the head of the just, but violence covers the mouth of the wicked. Right. The just give blessings. Yeah, the righteous give blessings. They bless you. They want the best for your life. If you experience the love of God in your life, there will be love in your life, and this love will extend even to your enemies. You don't want harm to them, even though they pursue you and they give you a hard time. You want to bless them. And there are blessings on the head of the just. You know, the just receive blessing, and they give blessing out as well. But then we've got violence covers the mouth of the wicked. And again, that's what a lot of it is what's about. Yeah? They love violence, and they love, controlling other people, gaining power, enriching themselves through the means of violence. And that is a big problem. They can't forgive. They need to embrace violence. Again, the devil comes to steal, kill, and destroy. So violence is very often you steal through violence, you kill and destroy, and that is what is a problem in this society. Big problem. Okay, one more verse. The memory of the just is blessed, but the name of the wicked shall rot. Yeah. So that's a legacy. The legacy of the just, the legacy of the wicked. Right, I think Hitler, everybody will remember Hitler for a long time. I'm just trying to think about some good guys as well. From that period of time, there's one guy called Wilhelm Busch, an amazing guy. I've listened to a lot of his sermons. And he went through this really, really hard time, and that what makes him kind of popular. Anne Frank, there's a museum in Holland, who was persecuted during this time. People who have Corrie ten Boom, people who have harbored persecuted Jews and ended up in a concentration camp when they got found out. Again, they've been known for what they did for many, many years, and they were sort of celebrated, and their life was taken as an example. And again, what do you want to be remembered for? Do you want to be remembered for as the biggest crook, the biggest, people are glad that you are dead? Or do you want to be remembered for as somebody who was loved and who was great? And it's interesting as well, when I look back in my memory, I've got lots of people who have passed on and who have died. But some people I still remember. It's just like one old babushka, an old lady from Dnipro in the Ukraine, and she was old. She couldn't do anything, and I met her. And one thing which struck me with her, she oozed out love, genuine love. Even though she couldn't do it, she was just her body was stricken, and she was in the very last stage of her lives. But she oozed out love. She was just a very lovely, kind person. And I don't forget this. I never forget this. I never forget this old lady. And it's been a great example for me as well, or to me as well. So what do you want to be remembered as? As some great conqueror, or as somebody where people have just got pleasant memories and they think, that was a person full of love. I had a good time around that person. So it's very, very important. It says here, but the name of the wicked shall rot. And again, just look at Hitler, Stalin. I mean, Stalin was laughed out of fear. If you didn't love him, you would forfeit your life. Similar to Hitler as well. The name shall rot. Their name is rotting. People don't like them. They're glad to be rid of them. It's again with this a king in Germany who was very wise. They call him Frederick the Great, and I think Frederick the Wise as well. One had an immense respect. He was a good king, a good ruler. He was a Protestant. He didn't try to enforce religion on anybody, but when he went out in Berlin for a trip out on the road to see his subjects, people just went on the road. And I sort of read a report about this. People went on the road, and the king was riding along, and they just greeted him. And they just said love and respect for this king. And that's how he entered history. He wasn't a man of war. He wasn't a man of power, of greatness, or anything like that. He was a man of wisdom, and a man who was there to rule for the benefit of his subjects. Yeah. And he was respected and loved for that. And it's quite amazing when you sort of hear reports about these people. So it's especially as well, I mean, if you have to go to war, and this war has been, put up by your leaders. If you love and respect your leaders, because, it's this relationship, they've done good to you, they've done good to the country. They're not corrupt. They're not, evil or anything like that, but they are righteous, just. They serve the nation with their ability to lead. It's a lot easier to go to war for those people if you have to, if you're ever put in this position, than for Stalin or Hitler or the modern day equivalents of Hitler, which we can all see these days. It's hard to go for war for those people, because what are you fighting for? For these people to protect their assets they've stolen from the country, for these people to indulge in their materialism, so they can get richer still through this war by you putting your life on the line. And that's a reality of what we are facing today. And a lot of wars, when I look in the last 100 years, there wasn't really a clear reason for it. It was just a war, which was fought for, not for righteousness or justice or anything like that, but seemingly just for keeping the military going, or keeping people who have invested a lot of money, making them happy and getting them more money. That's what it seems like in a lot of wars which we've seen in the last century. Okay, I've been on it for quite a bit. We've gone up to verse 7, but this is Proverbs of Solomon, so they're very loaded indeed. Thank you very much for listening. We're going to carry on with the next talk, and we'll be looking at verse 8 and the following. Okay, God bless, and bye-bye from Michael here at Seismic Radio.